Welcome to Ranting and Raving. Today, we're going to be doing some ranting and raving. Today's topic is about I have many, and we're going to start getting into here over the next few weeks. Um, One of my biggest pet peeves, which is analysis in sports. Analysis in general, um, especially right now in America, which we'll be touching on, but specifically to sports, is generally speaking trash. And I'm being nice by calling it trash. Most of the people that you hear doing analysis or attempting to do analysis on TV and radio either A, have no clue what they're doing, B, no clue what they're talking about, C, are clickbaiting you, or rage baiting you, or, well, some type of bait, and guess what? You're the fish. Or D, which is common the case, all of the above. Are there a few people out there that, cross sports, whether it's baseball, soccer, hockey, basketball, football, UFC, so on and so forth, who give you real, useful analysis? Absolutely. And does analysis mean that you have to go deep into the numbers? No, although we will be talking about analytics in this video as well, because there's something that gets misrepresented a lot, um, especially in football and basketball. But just as a general rule of thumb, a lot of people commentate. A lot of people clickbait. A lot of people have opinions. Most of them have no fucking clue how to analyze. You can analyze while having an opinion, but they are separate things. I can have the opinion that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player ever. My analysis is the how and why I came to that conclusion by establishing criteria, analyzing the criteria, comparing his way of meeting those criteria to his contemporaries, establishing a baseline, and then comparing, whether it be through pure statistics, through eye test, through some combination thereof, but having succinct, observable criteria that you use for the analysis. And then here's the really important part, folks: within fucking context. Here's actually what sparked this today. And this is, like I said, this has been a pet peeve of mine for years and years and years. This is a part of why I am, if not the most annoying person I know to argue with, I'm in the top two. Um, and the guy who's number one is just dumb. So, by default, I'm the most annoying person I know to argue with. And some of that's how I argue, but part of that is because I actually argue correctly. I will argue the fucking point. I will say what I mean to say. I will say it within context, and I don't generally get distracted by, okay, cool, you said this other thing, that's fine, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. Which is very frustrating to people who don't know how to stay on topic or don't know how to analyze things. And I'm overly analytical, so I'm very frustrating in general. But anyway, context is king. Here's a great example of context. And again, this is what spawned the specific thing today. Again, I'm not going to get deep into the whole GOAT thing because that's very specific. That's the big number one. Always, we need ratings. Talk Jordan and LeBron thing in the NBA. We'll talk about it, like actually do that in a different video to a degree, but just in general sports coverage. Here's a completely banana stat, and this comes from Dan Lebitard, who's a pretty reliable source and actually will check his stuff before putting it out there. But I'm saying it's from Dan, so if somebody says it's wrong or it's actually 1977, yell at him. That's where I got it from, and frankly, I don't care. So Shohei Ohtani. So if you don't know who Shohei Ohtani is he is baseball LeBron James. And here's what I mean by that. What makes LeBron special is that except for free throws, he is elite at every part of the game. And there's only a couple of guys ever that are great, all-time great on defense, all-time great on offense, and all-time great shot creators. There's more nuance we can go into than that, but for this purpose, that when I say something like that, that's really what I'm getting at for a comparison. Shohei Ohtani, apparently, since 1974, which I believe is the live ball era, which is why that is being used. But again, I could be wrong. I'm not a huge baseball fan. In fact, I'm a huge not baseball fan. But this is a bonkers stat. So apparently, with runners in scoring position, as a pitcher, guy who throws ball, the only position, by the way, in team sports that can actually say they won a game. If you're a big QB wins guy, you actually should be a baseball fan and follow pitchers. And Shohei Ohtani is one of the only pitchers ever that literally will win himself baseball games. So, since 1974, with runners in scoring position, as a pitcher, his slugging percentage is .210, which is the lowest since 1974. Apparently, as a hitter, with runners in scoring position, as a batter, he also has the highest slugging percentage since 1974. Either of those stats is mind-boggling. That is situational baseball. Those are the specific types of things that can and should win you games, and will, unless the rest of your team is terrible, which he plays on the Angels, the poor soul. There's literally, if you're not a baseball fan like me, like there's literally a meme about like, Mike Trout had like 6 RBIs and Shohei Ohtani did something that hasn't been seen since 1924, and the Rays beat the Angels 8-6, and that's like every game for them. But think about that stat for a second. In the last 50 years, no one has done either of these two very specific but extremely impactful things better than a singular player who plays a position that historically, one of these things is the most it's the most extreme outlier you'll ever see. We have seen pitchers who could bat. We have seen some pitchers who are good batters. We've never, at least in recent memory, we haven't seen a pitcher who is a dominant batter, who is a power hitter like this guy. He has a legitimate claim to being one of the best hitters in baseball, and a legitimate claim to being one of the best pitchers in baseball at the same time. That's like being the best quarterback in the NFL and the best linebacker in the NFL on the same goddamn team. It's preposterous. And here's why I'm bringing this up when I'm talking about analysis. Because we're not going to talk a lot of baseball. I'm not going to bring up Ohtani. But this is what made me want to talk about this. So we have stats like that. So here's why that stat is important and relevant. Baseball is a game, because of the nature of the game of baseball, that can be quantified and observed and measured in a real way with statistics that actually, like, they have win shares in baseball, they actually mean something. They have wins above replacement in baseball, they actually mean something. Advanced statistics in baseball actually mean something. They actually tell you things. And the reason they tell you things is because baseball, of the major sports, is the only one where you can have a player as transcendent as Mike Trout, and especially as transcendent as Shohei Ohtani. A guy who can literally in the same game have 4 RBIs and 13 strikeouts and lose. Baseball is the only sport where that can happen. And the reason for that is because of the team sports, baseball is the only one that, if you really distill it down to its finest parts, is a series of one-on-one events. Pitcher throws ball, batter swings at ball. If batter misses ball, strike. If batter hits ball, but ball goes out of bounds, foul. If batter if pitcher batter doesn't swing at ball, pitcher is in strike zone, strike. Pitcher is out of strike zone, ball. You have a maximum of 8 possible opportunities, meaning, or sorry, 6 opportunities. No, yeah. After 6 pitches, unless you keep fouling them off, something happens. 4 balls, goes on base. 3 strikes, strikeout. Or hit, something happens. But even once the hit happens, whoever the ball gets to, that person then fields it. If they catch it, batter's out. If it hits the ground, ball's live, it's in play. Person fields it, tries to throw batter. All of these things are one-on-one events. Even if you bring up the shift changes where you will try to hit the ball or where you can hit the ball. It tries to manipulate the batter, but it is still a series of one-on-one events. There is no such thing as a pick and roll. There is no such thing as a pick play. There is no such thing as, I don't know the equivalent in soccer, but they exist, or hockey, which is just soccer if it was faster with less flopping. It's actually kind of a compliment. But it's the idea. You cannot quantify other sports the way you can in baseball. But because baseball is a series of one-on-one events, you can have a transcendent player who does not win because even a pitcher, which is the single most impactful position in professional sports, more than quarterback, more than superstar in the NBA, because a pitcher is the only position in team sports that literally can technically win the game on their own. A pitcher can throw a perfect game and score at least one run and literally win the game on their own. That is a thing that can happen. Has it ever happened? I don't believe so. But it doesn't matter. It can actually happen. Tom Brady cannot fuck Tom Brady. He's not athletic at all. Mike Vick, Lamar Jackson, actually athletic quarterbacks who forget throwing it because you got to throw it to a guy. He's got to catch it. Nope, that's 2 people. Those guys who can actually run in touchdowns, but they can't play 11-on-11 defense against the other guys on their own to stop them from also scoring touchdowns. Even in the NBA, LeBron, Jordan, Kareem, pick your greatest player of all time. Even LeBron and Mike, who are 2 of the, 8, 9 best defenders ever at their peaks. Those guys, LeBron's probably a little bit lower than that, but not by much. And if you count versatility, he's actually massively underratedly high. But anyway, the point being, Mike was a phenomenal defender. If Mike's the only good defender or the only great defender on those Bulls teams, they don't win jack. You know how we know that? Because for a long time, Mike was the only guy on those teams who could score and was the only guy who could defend. And guess what? They didn't win jack. It's actually a team game. And this is how I get into what drives me nuts. That context matters. It's why sites like PFF, generally speaking, their grades are trash. Does it mean their grades are 100% wrong? No. They can have a grade and, oh my God, wow, it turns out PFF thinks Patrick Mahomes is pretty good. Oh, they're really brilliant. A fucking blind chimpanzee could figure out that Patrick Mahomes is pretty good. That doesn't really tell you much about the grading system. What does tell you a lot about the grading system is when you look at the middle class and the lower to middle class of the rosters, and you see all of these guys with wildly out of control grades, not only as an average, which if you get a large enough sample size of anything, it will get you fairly close to the truth, generally speaking, but their whole methodology is flawed. At least what we've been told about it. And I am intentionally paraphrasing here, but essentially they grade each play on its own, but they also try to grade each player's component on its own. But that's not how football works. And the same thing in basketball. There's all these advanced metrics that tell you Rudy Gobert is the greatest defender in NBA history and one of the most impactful players in the league. But if you actually watch basketball and understand basketball, and that is an important distinction, while Rudy Gobert is a good player and a very good defender, he's also very limited. And good to great players, and especially good to great players who are physical, have had their way with him consistently. And it's a big part of why he has problems in the playoffs, is because guys either go through him or around and past him, and his ability to disproportionately affect the other team falls down as he faces the higher level of competition. But because those advanced stats are looking at an 82 game sample size, in which you're not game planning, half the teams aren't good enough to attack his specific focuses, especially without a specific game plan. And he can be incredibly dominant against the mediocre teams. What you have are outlier stats that are bringing up the average, and then because of that aggregate, he looks like a dominant player. But if you actually sit down and watch the guy play basketball, no, we've seen dominant players. He ain't a dominant player on defense. He's not a dominant player on offense. He's good. Sometimes he's very good on defense. He's not dominant. He's not great. You can see great, and that's not like just a subjective measure. You can make an objective measurement about that. The ability to impose your will on the opposition. Rudy Gobert does not have the ability to impose his will on the opposition. You can go, oh, he's an incredible rim protector. Okay, great. Here's the problem. If you're an incredible rim protector, but you cannot move well in space, and the other team can get you out in space consistently, you know what they can then do? They can get to the rim. He's a good stationary rim protector as a drop big in a very specific coverage, which, because so much of the league is pick and roll, especially during the regular season, again, on an aggregate level, his advanced metrics look great. But those advanced metrics do not take into context. They do not take context into account. And a few of them take it into account a little bit better. But again, this comes to the analysts. All-time great defender. Oh, defensive player of the year. Oh, he's incredible. Oh, he's this, he's that. Okay, but if you write a list of the things he can do well, and you write a list of the things that he can't do well, forget great, just things he does well, things he doesn't do well. The side over here is much longer than the side over here. So unless he is transcendent at something over here, it's not going to make up for this long-ass list. It's just not. And he's not transcendent in anything. It's bad analysis. It's bad process. And we do it in the NFL. Is Tom Brady the GOAT? He could be. Honestly, personally, I don't think there is a GOAT. You can argue for it in the NBA simply because players play both sides. But I don't think there's a GOAT in baseball. I don't think there's a GOAT in the NFL. I don't think there's a GOAT in soccer. Although, again, they kind of play both sides, but it's still less. I don't think there's a GOAT in the NHL. Again, kind of play both sides, but it's less because there's still a goalie. You can have a GOAT in tennis, one-on-one sport. You can have a GOAT in golf, one-on-one sport. You can have a GOAT in golfing, or boxing, one-on-one sport. UFC, take your pick. And if you want to further divide it by weight classes, that's fine. But when you're talking team sports, if you do not affect all parts of the game, like that, the use of GOAT needs to be position specific. So is Tom Brady the greatest football player of all time? No. No. Simply because there are other guys that were just as great as he was. They just played different positions. Is Tom Brady the greatest quarterback of all time? Well, now let's get into analysis. And this is what drives me fucking nuts. The correct answer to this question is, what do you define as the greatest of all time? If Tom Brady is the greatest of all time because you think that wins are solely reliant on the quarterback, and no matter how the team wins, if he's the starting quarterback, he gets the credit, then yes, he's your GOAT. If your definition of the greatest quarterback of all time is the number of things they could do, how well they could do them, talent, peak performance, it's probably Aaron Rodgers. It'll eventually be Patrick Mahomes, but for right now it's Aaron Rodgers. If your definition is execution of the position, putting your team in position to win, Brady's one of the guys, but it's probably Peyton Manning, and Drew Brees is right there with him. Really, go check the stats. Drew Brees has more leads gained with like a minute and a half or less to go in games that were then given up by his defense than all of his other contemporaries combined. I think Tom has like 6 of them. It never happens to him, which is why he wins so much, because it's a team game. But this nuance is not discussed. He can be the greatest of all time. That's fine. But when you distill it just down to count the rings, he's got 7, these guys got da-da-da-da-da. Okay, well, he was mediocre in at least 3 of them. Was okay in 1 or 2 of the others. Like, didn't make mistakes, did his job, but was not the catalyst behind the victory. Now, he's played phenomenal in some Super Bowls, too. Don't get it twisted. But Tom Brady has been the recipient of a lot of good fortune and has been on some very good teams and has had several of his Super Bowls that were won on the back of his defense and his running game. Let's not forget, he recently won a Super Bowl 13-3. Tom had nothing to do with that victory. All he did was not fuck it up, which is a very valuable part of a quarterback's job, by the way. But again, analysis. And again, I'll go into basketball deeper. I'll go into football deeper. This is just a giant stupid pet peeve. Stop letting your sportscasters make lazy, stupid takes. Stop letting fucking morons how is this guy on TV? He is one of the worst people ever to do his job. Bobby Marks, look him up, comes out and says Steph Curry's the second best player ever. Okay, it's a ludicrous statement in a dozen different directions, and I love Steph Curry, but it's a ludicrous statement. And it's a ludicrous statement simply because there's 2 ends of the fucking floor. But to say that statement, like, it's obvious clickbaiting. We have someone like Skip Bayless who makes literally millions of dollars a year, and Skip makes millions of dollars a year. And again, you don't have to like LeBron, but understand this is a fact. Skip makes millions a year for rage baiting LeBron fans and generally saying extremely stupid shit on television. Whether you think Mike's the GOAT or LeBron's the GOAT or Kobe's the GOAT or Kareem or whoever, no, I don't care about any of that. But understand this: Skip Bayless makes his living saying extremely stupid things extremely loudly on television for absurd amounts of money because people will watch him on TV. Really, it's watch Shannon and then watch Skip so you can yell and scream at him. That is a huge part of his draw. Stop supporting that. Stop letting these people come on television and talk about sports in brain-dead, dumbass terms, making arguments that the average middle schooler who has at least barely played the game being discussed, if they stopped and thought about it for a second, could go, nah, that's stupid, and here's 10 reasons why. Stop allowing that. It is so frustrating. You want to say this player's great, that player's not bad. You want to say, oh, I don't like this signing. Okay, but tell me why. Because it's not analysis if you cannot embrace context. It is not analysis if you cannot frame it with context. Jameis Winston's a terrible quarterback. He's going to suck in New Orleans. Well, he was 5-1. Were there extenuating circumstances? Sure. Y'all didn't say that about Alex Smith when he started winning in San Francisco when they put a better team around him. He became a more efficient quarterback. He wasn't a great quarterback. He wasn't top of the league. He almost played in a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo has played in a Super Bowl and almost played in another and is a mediocre at best. At best. But has a different narrative around him because he played on better rosters and had some better results. But the quality of play was not better. Force these people to actually have good faith conversations. We as fans can make them put smarter people on television. I'll talk to New Orleans locally, Adam and Ryan who do the St. Twitter podcast. I love them. They're hilarious. They're funny. But when you actually hop on the show and you listen, when they sit down and talk football, it doesn't have to be X's and O's. It doesn't have to be this guy's the Z and this guy's the X and they're going to run this and they did this route combination. If you can do that, great. That's fine. But it doesn't have to be that. It can just be as simple as this player is not very good, and here's how that impacts the team, and here's why they're not very good, and this player is underrated, and they're telling us this guy over here can do this, but he can't do that, and here's how we know he can't do that, and here's what we really need to address this. You can say things in simple terms. You don't have to try to sound like a computer major. Like, you don't have to start down and like, oh, well, I queried the database and I found blah, 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 blah. You don't have to be that guy. If you can be that guy, great. But just have an honest conversation with actual analysis. Talk about what is actually happening, the actual facts, the things that exist on the field of play, the numbers we have, etc., but then contextualize them with real life and what happens and what it means, and it's a much more interesting conversation. Why do so many people love Nick Underhill, other than the fact that he has grown to love the city of New Orleans? Here's a major part of why people love Nick Underhill. Because Nick Underhill writes football articles about football. Oh my God. Could it be? Is it actually that simple? When fans want to know more about their favorite team and you tell them more about their favorite team and then you go, hey, our team is really smart. They do this thing. Here's why that cool thing you saw works so well. Oh, people who like the game, like to learn more about the game if you write it in a digestible format for them? Oh my God. Mind blown. You know what that is? That's analysis. It's not just stats. You're not just putting things on a spreadsheet, which can lie to you. It's not numbers don't lie, but people using numbers do. And that's not analysis. Analysis is with context. Analysis tells you why. Analysis tries to figure out why. Who, what, where, why. We all learn those really early on. Well, if you're not using them, you're not having an intelligent debate, you're not having an intelligent conversation, you're not doing quality analysis, and it's really fucking frustrating. As we can see, as I have now gone on and on and on about this for 25 minutes. So, I will wrap up this rant with that. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope many of you agree. I hope this is as frustrating for you guys as it is for me. I try not to do that stuff when I'm making my content, and when I do, I try to call it out. Like, I'm not being logical right now. This is how I feel, and I don't care about your opinion because reason X, which is rare. But we all have our favorite things, and that's fine. I think pineapple on pizza is gross, and I hate it, and some people love it, and that's fine. It's actually not fine. You're a monster. You should be ashamed. But it's just so exasperating. And I wish more analysis in sports on TV, on radio, and in general actually focused on talking about what is happening, why it's happening, how you could mitigate the bad things, how you could increase the good things, contextualize the game for the viewers, tell them more about the thing that they enjoy, and remind them about why they enjoy it instead of just giving surface level useless which I believe is the technical term to describe a lot of the content. So, I am Brian. This has been Ranting and Raving. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have other topics you would like me to go off about, or if you just like to tell me to shut up, that I'm totally wrong and everything that Skip Bayless says is right, put that in the comment section so I can find a way to block people on YouTube. But like, comment, subscribe, all that is always appreciated. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you guys more very, very soon.